Okay, so there's a huge legal showdown happening right now that's made its way all the way to India's Supreme Court. And it's all about one of the most common deals in the entire real estate industry. What comes out of this could seriously shake things up for developers and for anyone looking to buy property. So you have to ask, right? Why is the highest court in the country getting involved in what seems like a pretty standard business deal? Well, the answer involves, billions of dollars in taxes, and it could totally change how real estate projects are put together from now on. Let's get into it.
All right, so at the very heart of this whole thing is something called a joint development agreement, or a JDA for short. To really get what this fight is about, you first have to understand what a JDA is.
A JDA is actually a pretty straightforward idea. It's basically a partnership. Picture this. You've got a landowner with a great piece of land, but maybe they don't have the cash or the know-how to build on it. And then you have a developer who's got all the resources, but they need the land. A JDA is where they team up. Here's how it works, in 3 simple steps. First, the landowner brings the most important piece to the puzzle, the land itself. Second, the developer steps in and handles, well, everything else, the money, the construction, getting all the permits. And finally, once the shiny new building is up, they split the apartments or the office spaces. It's a classic win-win, and it's happening all over the country. But this is where that simple win-win partnership hits a massive wall. And that wall is taxes. The entire legal battle really boils down to this one question. When the landowner hands over the development rights, is that a transfer of land or is it the supply of a service? Because the answer to that determines if GST applies. And here's where the two sides are completely at odds. The developers are saying, look, this is all about the land. We're essentially getting the land to build on, and Indian law is super clear that selling land is excluded from GST, so no tax. But the tax authorities, they see it totally differently. They're arguing, nope, the landowner is providing a service to the developer, the service of being able to build, and construction services, oh yeah, those are definitely taxable under GST. And this is the developer's biggest complaint. It's all about what they call double taxation. They're making the point that if you tax them on the initial agreement and then you charge GST again when the finished apartments are actually sold to customers, you're basically taxing the same project twice. And they argue that just isn't fair. So as you can imagine, this wasn't just a theoretical argument. It started with a real tax bill, which set off a legal chain reaction that climbed all the way up the ladder to the Supreme Court.
So here's how it all went down. It kicked off on January 27, 2025. The tax department in Nashik sent out a formal demand for the tax. The developers immediately went to the Bombay High Court to challenge it. But the court basically said, you need to go through the usual appeals process first. The developers weren't having it, so they took their pace straight to the top, to the Supreme Court. And on October 13th, the Supreme Court agreed to hear them out.
So the Supreme Court is involved. What does that actually mean for the case right now? Well, it's not a final win for either side just yet, but believe me, it is a huge, huge development. What the Supreme Court has done, essentially, is hit a giant pause button on this whole thing. With its recent order, it has frozen the tax department's demand. Everything is on hold while the court decides to take a much closer look at the entire issue. Now, it's really important to be clear about what this stay order does and what it doesn't do. Yes, it stops that specific tax demand from back in January. But, and this is the key part, it is not a final ruling. The court hasn't decided if the tax is legal or not. The main event is still to come. But what this has done for sure is reignite this massive debate all across the country. And so, that leaves us with a multi-billion-dollar question. This case isn't just about one developer in Nashik anymore. The final verdict, whenever it comes, is going to set a precedent. It will literally redefine the financial rulebook for real estate projects across India. You can bet that developers, landowners, and homebuyers are all watching this one very, very closely.